Hi, and welcome to day 3 of the Seattle Shirt Sew-Along. Today, we will be wrapping up construction by attaching our neckband, both the scoop and the V-neck versions. Tomorrow, we'll have an extra day for asking questions and getting help and finishing your project. And the next day, you can post your finished project, and I am so excited to see everyone's finished projects. So, we'll see you there. I have my V-neck pattern piece here. This is an SSE pattern, so it conveniently comes with notches that indicate both the center fold and the shoulder seams. You can see the word fold and the arrows indicating that you are to line this edge up with the fold. I have my fabric here folded over on itself, and the fold line is there. So simply weight your pattern and cut it out, ensuring that you are careful to cut around the notches, leaving your indicator marks. You can see that I have my neckband piece cut out here. And on my pattern piece, I have a hole punch placed atop the apex of the triangle marking on your pattern piece. Lay your pattern piece atop your fabric, ensuring that the end that says fold is indeed over the folded end, and that the hole punched end is over the open free edge end. Now my neckband is currently folded in half, right sides together, so I am looking at the wrong side of the fabric. Place your pattern piece atop, ensure that it is lined up. Use a fabric pen or marker to mark the top apex of the triangle marking. Once you have your mark transferred to your fabric, you will use any standard ruler to draw a line from the corner to the apex of the triangle, and again back down to the other corner, transferring the triangle markings onto your fabric. Once you have transferred your triangle onto your fabric, you will sew along these markings with your sewing machine and a straight stitch. Now I have my piece sewn with a straight stitch. When you are sewing, sew up one side, and when you reach the apex, lower your needle, raise your presser foot, pivot your fabric, and sew back down the other side. Now we are going to trim. We are going to cut away the bottom portion of the triangle, trimming just below the stitching lines that we just made, but not cutting through them. So just like this. And then I'm going to make a small clip from the bottom of the triangle right up to my marking, but not clipping through my stitching. So you can see there just a little notch. Now we're going to take this over to the ironing board, and I'm going to show you a little trick that helps me ensure that I receive a sharp point on my V-necks. Okay, so now I have my neckband over here on my ironing board. I did want to show you quickly the fabric marker that I used is not specifically intended for fabric. It is called a friction pen. It is by the brand Ball, and it is Frixion. It's sold in the paper goods section with the regular pens. However, this pen goes away when you steam iron. So you can see the marking I made there. And when I iron, it disappears. So they are my preferred fabric marker. I always double check if I'm using on ivory or if I'm using a red pen. I always check on scraps to ensure that it does indeed disappear completely. So I opened up my neckband. Now you can see the point that we sewed right here. I'm going to focus on just one side first, laying this side over here flat, and opening the seam allowance, and I'm going to press the seam allowance to ensure that it remains open. Just like that. And I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. Pull it open, spread the seam allowance, and press it open. Now doing this helps the other side that will form your V-neck points to have a nice crisp seam. So the two seams that we pressed open, you will want to fold in half, wrong sides together, folding one atop the other. Line up the free edge on this side of the V and the free edge along this side of the V and press. Now you can see what a nice sharp V-neck point that will be. I'm going to continue to press my neckband, folding it in half, lining up the free edge, folding wrong sides together all the way around the circumference of my neckband. Now you can see that my neckband is pressed here with the point at this end. And you can see through this illustration just how important pressing and preparation can be for achieving ultimate results. So it's very important to not skip over this step. So ensure that that point is steamed and well pressed. Now this next step is an extra step that I take to ensure that the neckband comes out correctly. I am going to baste with my sewing machine from this point around the free edge. I'll be sewing the two free edges of the neckband together, and I will be staying within the 1/4 inch seam allowance. So sewing as close as I can to the edge of the fabric with a stretch stitch. I will be using a narrow zigzag stitch, and I'm going to go all the way around the free edge of the neckband, basting the free edges together. So I'm going to show you quickly how I'm going to baste my neckband with my sewing machine. I have it set to just my standard zigzag stitch. I lowered the width of the stitch to 3.0, and I lengthened the length of the stitch to 3.0 as well. I'm simply going to start sewing at the point as close to the free edge as possible, not stretching the neckband, allowing the momentum of the sewing machine to pull it through. So you can see I have the free edge basted with my sewing machine. It is important to remember to keep your stitches within the 1/4 inch seam allowance. If your pattern has a 1/2 inch seam allowance, then you can do this step on your serger. When you construct your garment, the additional basting stitches will be removed in your seam allowance when you construct your garment. So you can see that I can stretch my neckband and manipulate it, and it gives me more control. The free edge are adhered together, and they're not going to curl when I stretch the neckband to attach it to my garment. It just gives me more control and helps to ensure a good outcome. We are now going to attach our neckband to our garment. The first step is to baste the garment itself. So I have my front bodice here. This is the point of the V-neck, and I am going to baste about 1.5 inches up on one side from the V, staying within the 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you can use a straight stitch for this. With a straight stitch, so 1.5 inches down to the point, lower your needle, pivot, and sew 1.5 inches up the other side. This basting stitch simply helps to stabilize the neckband, removing some of the stretch to help it not lose its shape when you're attaching the neckband. So I have now basted along the point of my V-neck line. I'm going to take my neckband and I am going to choose the side of the V-neck that I think is most attractive. I like this side because I like the contrast between the white side and the print. So the side that you choose that you want to be visible on your neckband, you will lay down atop your shirt so that they are right sides together with the points facing one another. The point of your neckband facing the point of your neckline. I am now grabbing my Wash Away Wonder Tape. This is a product that I use frequently to help hold pieces of my garments together during construction. I'm going to cut a piece about 1.5 inches long and a second the same length. And I am going to attach them atop the basting stitches on your bodice front, close to the edge of the neckline. I buy this Wash Away Wonder Tape on Amazon because I find it's much more economical than purchasing it at my local craft store. But they do carry it at a wide range of craft stores, so it is not a difficult product to find. Okay, I have my Wash Away Wonder Tape adhered atop my basting stitches. Now I'm going to make one small cut. I'm going to cut my neckline from the point down through the Wash Away Wonder Tape toward my basting stitches, but not through my basting stitches. So really it is just going to be the smallest of notches, less than 1/4 inch. Just a tiny little notch, if you can see that there. If the seam allowance on your pattern is 1/2 inch, your basting stitches can be a little bit further down and your notch can be a little bit deeper. I'm now going to slide my neckband forward, lining up the point of the neckband with that notch that I just cut and adhering it to the tape. I'm going to work with one side of the neckband first. I'm going to stretch it up and adhere it along the neckline, adhering it to the tape. So I'm going to place my fingers here and pivot, pulling the neckband just slightly and adhering it to the tape. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. I'm going to grasp it just on the other side of the notch that I made, pivot, pull your neckband to the side, and adhere to the tape. Now when you turn your neckband right side out, as it will be when the garment is sewn, you can begin to see what your finished garment will look like. At this point, you will often have puckers here at the base of the bodice where it meets the neckband. If you do have puckers there, now is the time to be able to fix that. You will simply pull the garment away from the neckband, place your finger on the point to help secure it, and reapply, smoothing out any puckers that may have developed. You can see that this is even smoother than it was before. And so the Wash Away Wonder Tape acts as a sort of basting stitch or a practice helping to hold everything together. Now I'm going to flip my neckband back over so we're looking at the wrong side. And I am going to sew just along the neckband here with a basting stitch, ensuring that everything remains in place. I'm going to begin 1.5 inches above the point where I made my basting stitches previously, sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance down to the point, pivot, and sew back up, adhering my neckband and my bodice front together. Now I want to give you an up-close look at how I baste my neckband point on my bodice front. Now we've talked about how we're going to be sewing 1.5 inches on either side of the point, adhering it to the bodice, but when you flip the point over and look at the bodice side, you can see that some of the fabric here on the bodice bunches up a little bit around the point. So we want to be careful as we're sewing to ensure that this is smooth. So I sew with my neckband on top, and I use a straight stitch for this. I lower my needle with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, And I ensure that any fabric here is pulled forward toward me. This is my point, that any folds of fabric are pulled forward toward me, and that from my needle to the point is smooth. And I sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance to the point, lower my needle, raise my presser foot, and pivot. Now before I lower my presser foot, you can see that I do have bunching fabric here. If I flip it over, you can see it there. So I want to grasp 1.5 inches above the point where I'm going to end my sewing and pull any excess fabric away in the opposite direction. Lower your presser foot and feel to ensure that the distance between the needle and your finger here is smooth. We have now basted our neckband onto our neckline. I'm going to flip it up and take a look. And you can see what a nice clean point that is. Once you have reached this point and you have this clean neckline, the hard part is behind you. The rest of it is pretty easy from here on out. If you find that you have any puckers or that your neckband is an uneven width on one side or the other, you can remove the basting stitches, use your wash away wonder tape, re-adhere the neckband, and try again. It's much easier to adjust at this point than it is after you have attached the entire neckband. We will now move forward and go ahead and attach the rest of the neckband. So I'm going to flip my neckband back over so I'm looking at the wrong side. And you can see that the neckband is attached to the bodice on the right side of the bodice. So we're lining it up on the right side of the bodice, lining up the free edges all the way around the circumference of the neckline. Now, your point on your V-neck is center front. Directly opposite that is center back, and SSE patterns have a notch to help you find center back and take the guesswork out. So I have the center back of my neckband here, and center back of my neckline there. So I'm going to take my neckband and I'm going to slide it behind the fabric so that I am attaching it to the right side. Line up your notches and pin or clip. I'm going to do the same thing with the notch here that indicates the shoulder seam. So this notch and the shoulder seam will line up with one another. And again on the other side, your notch and your shoulder seam and clip. Now when you're attaching a neckband, it will always be slightly shorter than your neckline. It is necessary to stretch the neckband just slightly, but never stretch the bodice front itself. So now I am going to place a clip at the midpoint between my shoulder seam and my center front. I'm going to grasp them both in my hand, and you can see the bodice here, the neckline. I am going to stretch the neckband until it is the same length as the neckline. I'm going to walk my fingers in here to the center and clip. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Shoulder seam, center front, stretch the neckband until they are the same length, grasp it in the center, and clip. If you want to, you can do the same thing between the shoulder seam and center back, but this is a shorter distance and it may not be necessary for you. Stretch, grasp the center, and clip. You can add as many pins or clips to your neckband. If you feel more comfortable having them be 1 inch apart, then you can go ahead and do that. You can add another one in between. It is not going to hurt you to have too many pins or clips if you are a beginner with neckbands. So I now have my neckband pinned all the way around. I am going to be sewing on the inside of the garment on the wrong side. I am going to sew with a stretch stitch and a 1/4 inch seam allowance from the point, around, past center back, and back around to the point again, attaching the neckband to the garment. Okay, I have now sewn or serged my neckband onto my garment. It is at this point that I always press well. I'm using a tri-blend, which is a cotton fabric, and so I have my iron on high. If you're using a polyester blend, then set your iron to medium and steam. And the way that I press my garment is to first begin by using my fingers to ensure that everything is flat and as smooth as possible. That the seam allowance along the back is facing down, that the seam allowance along the front is facing down toward the bodice. And in very short movements, I'm simply going to slide inward toward the neckline and steam. Again, on the other side, move inward toward the neckband. When I do the back, I move down, begin at the shoulder, ensuring that the seam allowance is indeed facing down. Pressing well at this point can ensure that your neckline and your neckband have a professional finish that lasts. This is just a way of setting the stitches. Okay, so once you have pressed it, do not touch it. Simply leave it to fully cool on its own, and you can also have a professional looking neckband that looks just